Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Kaylee Batesman, the Content Director at SheCanCode, and today we are discussing how to set healthy boundaries as a working parent and still be successful. In this episode, we're going to delve into the art of setting and maintaining healthy boundaries while juggling the demands of a thriving career and parenthood. I've got three amazing women in tech from Capco today. It's a very special treat for us. We've got three of them. We've got Eve, Irene, and Lilian. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your days. We're going to start with some intros, if that's okay, to set the context for each of you. Eve, shall we start with you? A little bit about you, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Eve Bjonness. I've been with Capco for around 3.5 years. I work as a senior consultant in the regulatory space. And I'm also the lead for our Parents and Carers network in Scotland.
How did you fall into tech? Are you one of those?
I'm not actually tech. I think this came up maybe before when we were discussing that. So I'm actually on the not on the tech side. So work as a consultant, as I say, in a regulatory space. But obviously, as part of this discussion today, with me being a lead for the Parents and Carers network, I think that's where my contributions were coming into this. But happy to and looking forward to hearing about some of the others that do work in tech.
Perfect. And Irene, yourself.
Hi, my name's Irene. I'm a principal consultant at Capco. I've been at Capco for 5.5 years now. Most of the roles I take on are product roles. So I'm generally a product owner, product manager on the client side, and within Capco, I'm part of the technology leadership team. So I run the part of the team where we organize how we share our knowledge between the teams. So it's really important when we come off clients or when we're on clients to make sure that we're all talking to each other and sharing knowledge and lessons learned we get from clients and different projects. As we know, technology changes quite quickly. I am a mom of one 2.5-year-old boy and expecting another one.
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh. And do you come from a traditional computer science background, or what was your journey?
I do not. So my journey started, so I studied linguistics, and then I went off and did a PhD in cognitive developmental cognitive neuroscience / linguistics. So I looked at social cognition development in teenagers. And I basically switched careers when I joined Capco through their fellowship program. So they have a fantastic program where you can join if you come from a PhD background, from any sort of background. So I had some technology experience there because my experiments used technology such as eye tracking and EEG. So I was exposed to like big data and some technologies there, but then I decided to switch careers and leave academia, and that's how I joined Capco, basically.
Amazing. Yes, our ladies love to hear how people end up working in the tech sector in some fashion. So another great story there, not having to be technical, not having to be from computer science background. Lilian, yourself, last but not least.
Thank you. I'm Lilian Camargo. I've been in Capco for 2 years now. I'm a senior consultant in cybersecurity department. So I lead identity and access management offering. I'm based in US, and I am mother of 2 young ladies, which is one, it's almost 2, and the other one, it's 4 years old.
Oh, yes. And traditional background, again, not into technology, or how did you end up at Capco?
Yeah, so I started my career 10 years ago as a software developer, and I thought that would be my future. And then I was involved in regulatory requirements, and I moved to cybersecurity. I joined a master's degree in cyber risk and strategy. And I would like to, at that point, I joined Capco to leverage all my knowledge from school.
Incredible. Well, ladies, you all have very different backgrounds, and it's going to be a really good discussion today to hear about how you set healthy boundaries as well at work as a parent. So we're going to jump straight into that discussion, and I'm going to ask you, what does it mean to set healthy boundaries as a working parent? Eve, perhaps you can kick us off with that. What do we mean by healthy boundaries?
Yeah, and sorry, just to say in my intro, I failed to mention that I do actually have 2 sons, which is a bit rude of me, completely forgetting that I am also a parent. I have 2 boys who are 12 and 6, so yeah, just that adds into obviously the mix of everything that we do here working. But yeah, so healthy boundaries, I mean, I think it's the ongoing kind of struggle really for anyone that is a parent and is working. Like there's no, I think you kind of come to the realization there's no magic answer, there's no one answer to it. It is a constant kind of juggle of what's going on and reprioritizing as you go. I'm quite lucky that my husband works different sort of shift work, so that can in some ways be not so great, but also in other ways is, you know, he's therefore around a lot of the time, you know, days that I maybe have to go to the office or events that we may have on, it means he is not actually working as well. And I do have sort of great support around me in terms of grandparents as well that help a lot with kids. But I do think as well as having that help, like you say, you do have to set boundaries, you do have to have a cut-off point of a day. I think the working from home that came along with COVID that we all weren't used to, in some ways was a bit of a struggle. You go, you know, I go directly from this room I'm sitting in and I walk out and, you know, I'm into the chaos of, you know, kids home from school, homework, cooking dinner, whatever it may be. You don't even get that commute home to sort of unwind and, you know, maybe listen to some music or read a book or whatever that may be. So there's a little bit of that. It's almost sometimes like taking yourself away. I like to try and, you know, go for a run or go to the gym and just have some time to completely switch off and still, you know, reset before you go back into that sort of 2 separate roles, whether, you know, coming from work into parenting. But I do think, you know, I try not to, when I've logged off of an evening, sort of have to go back to it unless it's something really necessary, and try and really look at, you know, that like this is my time now with the kids. You know, whatever time, you know, post tea, we've got activities every night of the week now between the 2 of them, so it's, you know, there isn't really any time to be doing a lot of evening working. And, you know, I'm not one to be sitting up till all hours of the morning. I'm not, you're not going to get the best out of me at those hours. So I think it's just, you know, understanding the hours that you are at work are like really focused and really, you know, you have to do what you need to do in that time.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you mentioned there's no commute home. And you're absolutely right. I think it took a long time for people, and especially with lockdown, just to differentiate the difference between leaving that room and separating that as work and home. And you know, a lot of us have gone into hybrid working, and it's so important to have to separate the two, because you are right, you don't have that commute, you don't have that time on your own. And obviously it can start to take its toll. I love the fact that you mentioned that your husband shift works, which is, a few ladies actually on this podcast have said when you work for a company, sometimes parents are slightly more loyal employees than say graduates, because the thought of having to change your routine sometimes just sounds like hell. And if somebody works shifts, that can be slightly easier mentally, because it must be tough if something changes in your day, how to juggle that.
And it's a sort of rolling shift pattern, so no 2 weeks are the same. So there'll be days he's working day shift and I'm going to the office, so that's like we're all out the house, so who's picking up the kids from school? There are then nights he's working night shift, so I'm maybe trying to get back home before he leaves, and then he's coming in the morning, I'm leaving, so there is a little bit of juggling it. And as I say, the kids have activities literally every night of the week now, so it's again a juggle of who's dropping who where, who's picking up, where are we going. But it's just staying on top of it sometimes, and I think it's that mental load that like we talk about. You know, it's a lot to remember to do. There's a lot of just and particularly now the past few weeks, December is just like madness. Like every other week, it's to wear a Christmas jumper, there's Christmas lunch, there's a Christmas party, there's like just everything, bring in money for this or that. You know, it's just a non-stop kind of juggle of everything. But and I think that's why you need to just, it's almost keeping on top of it, but and just being realistic and taking it almost like, for me it's really week to week, like what's happening this week, what's on, what are we both working, when do I need to be in the office, who can help us, and then you just, you know, deal with it later. I used to get, I think, a bit caught up in the longer term and we can't keep doing this for months and it's a real struggle, and it's like you need to just look at, you know, what's in the calendar this week at work as well as at home, and like, so what do we need to do, and deal with it that way.
Yes, definitely. I saw on LinkedIn recently a post where somebody had said a new appreciation for my colleagues that are parents, because you're right, it was Christmas jumper day, it was carol services, there was a nativity, and it was all these things you have to tick off in December.
Absolutely crazy. I've literally just come back from my son's Christmas concert as well, which was really nice, but he's like the first one on singing his song, and then you don't want to be rude when you got to sit through like all these other classes of songs, and I'm like, really do leaving, but I don't want to be rude. So I'm trying to get in the festive spirit as well, and not totally kill all Christmas vibes at the moment. But yes, it's just non-stop.
Yeah. Irene, what about yourself when it comes to setting healthy boundaries? I mean, December's one thing, but what do you think it means to set healthy boundaries at work as a parent?
Yeah, just December is definitely not the month where we set any boundaries. It's all up for grabs, as you saw from trying to reschedule this podcast a few times. Yeah, I guess for me, I think Eve touched on this a little bit. So COVID brought on a lot of like positive things. So the shift from not having to travel, from being home, from having that more flexible hours concept. And really depends on client to client, because with Capco, since we are a consultancy, it does depend on the client environment you have. But so far I've been lucky where you can just be, you know, my boundary is I'm around and I get my job done, but you have to be flexible that at 5 p.m. I'm going to turn off my computer to go pick up my son, and I might log on later. So I'm very strict about the time where, you know, I'll go and pick him up. I'm very strict about that. I always try to make that time to go and pick him up, bring him home. There's some exceptions, but that's only if my husband can do it. And if not, I'm very strict about that. And then I can log on afterwards and do the work. So long as like you're fine with me getting the work done within the day, my boundary is I need to be flexible throughout the rest of the day so I can, you know, make sure to meet my son's needs. And that can be like on sick days. I think pre-COVID, I don't think you could stay home with your child and work. Now you can stay home with them and also work, and, you know, you'll work when they're napping or when they've gone to bed. So you'll still end up not missing, you know, you don't have to take a day off from your holidays to fulfill that. So that's really helpful. So I just have like very, very small rules, but I'm very strict about them and I try to follow them. And I think so far that has worked and helped. So I don't know with 2 if that's still going to be possible. And as they grow and they go to school, because right now it's just that nursery. So nursery has, you know, a bit more flexibility than actually being in school, but let's see.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more changes along the way, but yes, at least, you know, you've set that boundary at work and people can just be mindful of that around that time of the day that you're going to disappear, just not to expect things from you. Lilian, yourself, what do you think it means to set healthy boundaries as a mum of 2 girls?
Yeah, so I think Eve and Irene, they mentioned things that I also practice in my routine. There is a moment of the day that we disappear, of course, and it's super important to be honest with our colleagues and clients that, hey, 5:30, I won't be available for any other meetings. But if you need, you know, just to wrap up a document, a slide, a deck, I'm happy to do it after 8 when kids are sleeping. This is something that I would like to emphasize, is that I do not negotiate my routine with my kids during these 2 hours, right? So that's the moment that I want to be present with them. So I don't want to sacrifice the time. It's just I struggle to be productive during my day, but I don't want to sacrifice the time that I'm with my kids. So I really like to be transparent with everyone, but really since we have less commute hours, that's the moment that I try, even when I need to go to the office, that's the moment that I use to, just to transition my mindset and prepare for the day. And then, put together my to-do list, try to be productive when I'm in the office or even during the day. When I'm working, I'm really working. I try to not switch gears to motherhood, and then try to finalize during these hours.
Yes, and I agree. I love the fact that you used the word transparency and just being honest, because I wanted to ask you all next about how do boundaries contribute to a healthier work-life balance. And Lilian, what you just said there about just being transparent, that just helps with a healthy work-life balance, doesn't it? Because if you're just open and honest with your colleagues, then they're not expecting you to be around at a certain time, or they might contact you at 5:30 in the day and not hear from you, and you think, well, I was honest, but actually it's easier for that person as well. It's easier for your colleagues to respond to that because they know when to expect you and when not to expect you, and it doesn't leave them feeling frustrated either. And it just all round makes everybody just feel a lot healthier, whether you're a parent or not a parent, and working with other parents. Being transparent just helps for everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, it helps. I know that sometimes time is critical, and I'm happy to jump back to work when I'm available. But today we have Teams, we have emails, and we're constantly with our phones. We can quickly chat and say, hey, I'm unavailable, but in an hour we can jump in the call. Or even if it's your kid is sick. Irene just mentioned that now post-COVID, we can work from home, even though the kid, it's not 100%, but we still can handle both together. I know it's a little bit stressful those days, but yeah, we can overcome.
Yeah, Irene, you did mention about working from home now and how things have changed. And how do you think boundaries contribute to a healthier work-life balance, and setting those boundaries? That was quite a change for us working from home, wasn't it? And having to suddenly set boundaries with colleagues about when to contact you and that you're not available 24/7.
Yeah, so it's funny because I really enjoy what I do. So in my mind, I remember during COVID, I would sit until 8, 9 o'clock. This was before I had kids, on phone calls and stuff. But I guess I'm privileged in the fact that I actually enjoy what I do. So sometimes for me, that blur wasn't, setting that boundary to stop working wasn't quite as it should have been, I guess. But it's interesting because I think Lilian mentioned it about how, now you can use your phone and you can email back and message on Teams, etc. And I actually love that I have that on my phone because I think it helps me a lot when I'm on the go. It makes me feel more comfortable that I'm not missing something, or if something's urgent, someone will be able to reach out to me and I'll be able to respond or see it. And so it allows me to feel comfortable when I go pick up my son, or I need to, step aside and be with my son. I actually feel that comfort. I had people telling me, oh, you're not very good at setting boundaries between work and, because you have everything on your phone all the time and you're always responsive. And I said, actually, for me, it's important that I have my work on my phone, because that means that I am comfortable to step out for 30 minutes and do something else with my son, because then if something does come up, I can address it if I feel like it's urgent enough to be addressed. If I didn't have that, I don't think I would have been brave enough to step out and spend those 30 minutes or that hour that I needed to. For me, being able to respond on my phone at any point in time, some people view it as, you know, you're crossing the boundary between like working and not, but for me, it's actually a survival thing. It's just how it helps me feel more comfortable and be able to do my job well, but also spend time with my family.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation with two ladies on here recently about setting boundaries whilst on holiday, and we did say that as well. It makes some people feel more comfortable if you can just check your emails while you're on holiday, and if there is something really urgent, at least you're there and you saw it. Whereas some people love to set that boundary. I'm out of office, I'm not looking at my emails, especially if you're on a beach or something like that. Absolutely take the time. But it is down to that person whether or not they want to check up on things, or if you're out running an errand and you still want to check up on a message. It does give some people some comfort just to know that everything is fine, or something urgent needs to happen and you're there to respond to it. So I think it does come down to the person. You are right, whether or not you decide to have work on your phone so you can pick it up while you're out, or out of office, then yeah, some people that does give a lot of comfort. It does depend on the person, obviously, and what kind of boundary you've set. What about yourself? Do you agree with that? Do you have work on your phone, or how do your boundaries contribute to a healthier work-life balance?
So one of the things I was actually thinking about when we were talking earlier about, and it probably was through COVID as well, about it, I feel like there was a little bit of a shift towards probably not, there wasn't an expectation that, and maybe particularly for parents working at home who had kids at home, trying to homeschool, all that fun stuff we went through, that it wasn't about you have to be logged on working from 9 to 5. It became a lot more about the actual output, about the deliverables, like what is my role, what do I need to deliver, and if I'm still doing that within whatever time I need to do that throughout the week, then it's still being done. And I think a little bit of that is almost kind of hopefully carried through a little bit, and I quite like that it's not about, particularly in the office, it's not about I have to be in the door, I have to be sat in my chair for 9 o'clock and I can't leave until 5:30. It's like, well, what are you waiting on from me? Am I behind on something? Have I not delivered on something? Like have that conversation rather than you're not sat at your desk for 8.5 hours today. So what are you doing? Where have you gone? Do you need time off? That sort of conversation. I just thought that was quite interesting. Like it hopefully is shifting a little bit more towards that it's about what you're actually delivering on, rather than just that time sat at your desk doesn't necessarily make you productive and make the job that you're doing any better.
And you work less as well when somebody's picked up on, oh, you were 5 minutes late. You think, well, you're going to get less out of me today.
Absolutely.
I was working
I totally
Sunday.
get that. Like, I think it's that flexibility. I think if employers are flexible with you and understand that, you'll be doing a drop off one morning, so you're going to be in later. And I'm a bit like that. If I don't have to do the kids drop off, I'm probably in the office quite early. I'm probably in neither, and it is a day I'm going to the office. I'll be there maybe for 8 o'clock. Whereas there may be times I have to do drop off, so I'm not coming in till like after 9. And you do still have that sense of walking in and everyone's sort of already sat down. But I think it's that flexibility of understanding, like, well, yesterday I was in an hour earlier and I'm coming in an hour later today, or half an hour later today, because I had to do some drop off, and I'll be here a little bit later tonight because I don't need to rush off for the pickup. And I think if your employer is flexible with you on that, then like you say, you become more flexible. Whereas if somebody's very stringently like, no, you weren't here at 9 o'clock and you have to stay till 5:30, and you're going to, for me anyway, I'm going to do exactly those times, and you're not really going to get as much out of me as well. I think there has to be that two-way conversation, like that two-way flexibility. And as you say, I think you get so much more out of people if that is how you treat them.
Yes, and it is an understanding between yourself and the employer as to, as you said, whether or not you're delivering on what you should deliver, and also that whether or not you're at your desk at 9. I remember I worked with a girl and they said, be as flexible as you wish, and it is that. It was very trusting workplace, but she used to come in at 12:30, and we used to think, that's taking it slightly too far. I know you're working into the evening because she was having calls with clients, but it was kind of like, you need to be within working hours. So it is Almost an unspoken rule.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme.
Don't go too far. All of you have spoken about setting those boundaries and that you figured out what boundaries to set for yourselves. Can I throw it out to the floor? Are there any common misconceptions about setting boundaries that you've all encountered? Was there anything that you kind of expected when you set that boundary and actually it didn't happen?
I've definitely got experience when I first had before I was in consulting, when I first had my eldest son, I worked a sort of reduced week, so I only worked 4 days. I worked sort of slightly longer days, but only worked 4 days a week. So like I think it was at that time it was a Friday I had off, and there was just always this kind of like, oh, you're off tomorrow, you got a holiday, is that you on holiday? Like all these, and they were always said in jest, but at all of it you're like, I don't get paid for not being here on a Friday every week. I get 80% of my holidays, I get 80% of my pay, I get 80% of every single benefit. I'm not just swanning off every Friday for a day off and not doing my work. I'm also not doing 80% of the work. I'm one head in this work, and I have 100% of the work. I need to get it done in 80% of the time and get rewarded 80% of it. So that it started to grate a little bit sometimes. And I know, as I say, it was generally said in jest as, oh, you're off tomorrow, that's lucky for you, going out for lunch with your pals and what you're doing. Like, no, I'm like, absolutely not what I'm doing. And yeah, I'm not, I don't get paid for it. So, you know, I'm doing nothing wrong here. But I think that, yeah, just that misconception of flexible working, you were a bit of a, you know, a part-time worker and probably doing half the work, whereas I think people that do so much more because they're trying to make up for the time they're not there that 1 day a week. You know, you had to keep on top of everything and be, you know, sort of extra on the ball with it all.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually, because there is that argument at the minute about a 4-day week and whether or not people are more productive within that time. And actually, I've heard that so often that actually working less days as a parent, you find yourself doing more. And most parents say within that time, I am working.
yeah, because I think it's just that it's like, as I say, it's never, you know, maybe if you had even more reduced hours and you were like a proper maybe job share type thing where you so it was half the workload you had. But I think particularly with something like that where you reduced to sort of 4 days, you know, there's no reduction in the amount of work that's expected. Really, that's, you know, you're classed as one person in that team. But yeah, I definitely think that's the case, that people feel they need to sort of, you know, they need to show that actually that this works as well, because it's almost that if I can't show that this flexible working agreement is actually working and I'm still getting through the workload that I need to, then it might be taken away from me, and then I will have to come in 5 days a week, and then that's a whole other conversation on childcare. You know, for people, it's not just nice to have that extra day off. I mean, all of it's around the need to look after your children and not pay for childcare or find someone else that can look after them for that day. So I think there's always, yeah, you just pushing yourself that little bit more to prove like, no, this works, it's fine. I can do this job in 4 days. So you're probably doing even more. Yes, I've heard that often. Irene and Lilian, yourself, any misconceptions when you set boundaries? Was there anything that you might have been worried about setting those boundaries that really surprised you?
Actually, I would say that the main misconception was actually from my point of view. When I was not a mom, I was not so comprehensive about this flexibility that we're discussing today. And it's funny how I changed my mind. Originally, I thought, yeah, you know, it's so complicated. This person with a sick kid, for instance, she's not in today. I really want to talk to her or meet her to decide this, and that. And today, unfortunately, that's so annoying. And now it makes, you know, open my mind to see, yeah, now I'm in the other side, and I feel that it's important that the family comes first, and we need to understand. And I'm lucky to be in a team and in a company and a client as well that understands that understand and provides this flexibility that eventually, if you're not around, you'll be back tomorrow as effective and as organized as usual, and productive as usual. So it's just the main misconception, what I'm trying to point here, was from my point of view, actually.
And you
it's
probably
funny
wouldn't
how we
stick
grow.
around.
Exactly.
You probably wouldn't stick around either if your company didn't feel that way. I'm assuming if you'd found that actually your company were how you thought they were going to be, then they're going to struggle to retain good talent. Good ladies will just keep leaving.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good point of view. And fun fact is that we in cyber practice in US, half of the team is are basically are females, which is great. So meaning that if the team was not welcoming and not supportive, we wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah, that's always good when you join a company that has previously been so focused on making sure that its workforce is very balanced. So it is easier when people become parents and they can express their needs, which is what I wanted to ask you all about, communicating your boundaries. How can working parents effectively communicate their boundaries with their employers? Irene, should we start with you? Is there a way that you can communicate your boundary with your employers, or is that something you just do up front, or does it change as you go? You mentioned changing needs of children, so how can people do that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what client you are at the time and who's your line manager and the team you're working at the time. And I think it's just when I first joined if I give you a very small example, when I first joined the leadership team on the technology side in Capco, the first sort of get together call was at 5 p.m. and I took the call, but on the go. And I said, I'm on the go, guys. Just so you know, this is the time I pick up my son. I'm happy to take the call, but it will be on the go. I won't be on my laptop. And that was the way, I said, I'm happy to take it, but this is the consequence. And the response was, great, let's change the time so that it suits you as well. So it just depends on the situation that you're in. I think you just have to find the right time and polite way to kind of, phrase it. This is my, this is the sort of challenge I'm facing as a parent. It would be great if you can help me out. And, so far I haven't received a negative sort of response to that, because I do appreciate also that people still work at 5 o'clock, meetings still need to happen. So it's just a matter of finding that balance and you have to give to take, I think. So
yeah
I think with that as well, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's also been kind of open and honest with it, in that situation, maybe not you trying to sort of pretend I'm not busy in the background on the go here and I'm just going to do this call, and nobody will know that that's actually I'm on a pickup. It's there's kind of no point to that. It's you have to just be open and honest about it, I think, at the start, and also not embarrassed about it, but there's no point in trying to pretend that that's not part of your life, because it just then becomes a real struggle to try and juggle and do everything suit everybody at the same time, which is never going, that just leads to that just takes you down a horrible route. But I think it's just
and
that
the person on the phone, you're right, being honest to the person on the phone, hey, I'm out, I might not give you my full attention because this is the time that I need to disappear. And you're right, instead of, I've had colleagues do that where they in the end you go, you're in the car, aren't you? Shall I just call you back when you're free? And normally that's fine with somebody, but you're right, unless you're transparent about where you are and what you're doing, and that you might not be able to help them fully at that point.
And I think people are more receptive to that if you are. I think it would be more if it went on and it was sort of months down the line and they were all right, why didn't you say at the start? And then it's a bit more of an awkward conversation. Whereas, like you say, people are, they instantly were right, well, let's just change the time. That's absolutely, I feel that's what people would do, because they're more receptive to understanding what your, what your sort of your challenges are.
Yeah. And so none of you have said anything about struggling with your boundaries at Capco, which is a good thing to hear. How is Capco supporting working parents then when it comes to setting those boundaries? Is there anything that you think they do well as a company? I mean, some companies are just really good at policing you to make sure that you stick to your boundaries. Is that something that any of you have felt from Capco?
I've definitely found it just in terms of line managers, performance managers that I've worked with have always been very supportive and, in recognizing if you're struggling and speaking, if they have to speak to the client instead of me speaking directly. Like, there's not been terrible situations like that, but I think they're quite aware of everyone. Everyone's got a different situation, a different scenario they're in, and they're here to sort of support everyone. There's obviously the aim to be more diverse across the company is there. So yeah, I see that they're supportive. I'm obviously part, as I said, of the Parents and Carers Network, and obviously that's there to try and make people be recognised and feel supported, and try and work with with people to make sure they can balance both their work and their family life and still be successful at Capco. Like, that's high on our agenda. There, we've kind of looked at initiatives with people coming back from maternity and maternity leave or long-term leave to see like what would be the issues when you've come back into the business. How can we support people better, because that's a real drop-off rate, a real drop-off point, and it's how in consulting is obviously different as well, because we have our we have our core roles, and then we have our other kind of consulting things that we have to do on top of that. So it is a big juggle, but it's I feel like the company wants to help people still be successful in that scenario, and that's part of what we do with that network as well, is to try and just make sure people are aware that there's a group of people there going through the same kind of stuff. We're there to talk.
Yes, and having that network, you just hit the nail on the head there. Just having a group of people that are all going through the same things must be so encouraging for people, especially new parents who might be thinking, is it just me that feels this way? Just to hear it from other people. We're going to talk a little bit about self-care strategies. What self-care strategies do you recommend for working parents to maintain their well-being while managing professional responsibilities? Irene, should we ask you about that? Do you have any self-care strategies that you use in terms of setting boundaries and making sure you have time just for family?
I don't know about self-care, but I think maybe this kind of goes more into your other question about tips. I feel like surrounding yourself with a support system and also being extremely organized, I think allows you to, let's say, stay above the water and then maybe have some self-care time. But I think, just going back to your previous question with Capco, I think before I even had kids, people ask me like, what is the number one thing you like about Capco? And I would say the people. So I don't know how, but somehow the culture and the people that join Capco is very special, and it's still the case. And I think that because it's such a good culture, you end up in teams, at least I always have, in teams with extremely good people, extremely good culture, and that kind of helps you, helps you go about your day. So even if your client isn't isn't the most supportive, if you're surrounded by a really good supportive team, it helps all around. So it helps even if you are a parent or if you aren't a parent. And so I think having that support system really, really helps. Now at home, having a support system also helps. I know Eve mentioned earlier that she's lucky with, her husband having more shift work. My husband doesn't have shift work, but he's very supportive. He'll do pickups, and, because those boundaries that I set don't always go the way I plan them to do. There are times where I do have to take calls at 5, but I'm only able to do that because I have an excellent partner who can drop everything and go and pick up our son and take care of him as well. So I think it's just about having a support system and being extremely organized. I know that this year I was messaging other friend moms from November what the kids wanted for Christmas. And I tried to like, you know, organize everything from November, order all the gifts and everything. So organization is key.
I love the fact you mentioned that. A lot of ladies on this podcast talk about when they come back to work, they almost feel like a different employee because they picked up all these skills when they were on maternity leave, and they come back and they're like, I'm so much more organized. I have to be organized. I'm really good at negotiating now because I have to negotiate with my child when they won't eat something. And, you know, as if they just come back as a new person.
It's true. I mean, I think one thing that like, I think non-parents, I think moms have it more than dads. I mean, I don't generally like to discriminate. I think all parents have this, but I think moms generally have this more than dads. I think people misunderstand or don't understand the depths of where your mind goes throughout the day. It's constant. Like you're literally thinking like it's everything. It's like, okay, I'm on this call, but then I have to think about what's for dinner. What time do I have to go pick up? Has the laundry been done? Are there clothes for tomorrow, like for school? Like, is there enough clothes for him to wear for the rest of the week? And it's just a constant, like your mind never stops. And you have to think about a million things to make sure that everything is ready. So it's like you have your job, but then you also have this like other layer where it's like constantly nonstop in the background, making sure you check that list off and making sure that everything else is done. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah,
but a fun one.
Definitely the mental load of it all. It's a lot of remembering and being the one to sort of to list, just like constant lists of things to do, remembering all the things to do. It's just and I think people think it's not really a thing. Like my husband or something is like, I'm just asking a question about, it's like, where is something? And I'm like, you have all this information at your disposal, like for all the kids' activities. Where are we going tonight? What time is it? I'm like, you have the same information that I have. I'm just having to now remember another thing, like, and I don't really have the time to remember another thing. Like you need to kind of get an understanding of what that, what's going on there. It's it's hard.
Lilian, on that topic of all of those things that are happening, always remembering all of those things happening in the background, that it all runs smoothly. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that self-care question that we just touched upon there, but how can you prioritize self-care without feeling guilty? Because if there's all that going on as well, and you're trying to be good to yourself, but actually you just feel really guilty that you've got other things to do and you've got work to do.
Yeah, it's funny question because I'm always feeling guilty when I'm working. I feel like, oh, I wish I could stay with my kids for an additional hour or so. And then when I leave the office and I go to pick them up, I feel, oh, I wish I could, do a final review in that deck before I send. So we need to live with the guilty no matter what. But some of the items that I would like to do, so as a tech professional, and I love to do what I do, we know that we constantly need to be, recycling and learning new tricks. So I think read is something that I feel like it's a self-care because I love my work. So I like to read some technical guides and learn new technologies, AI or something. Also, when you feel like stressed, just take a walk, just, have lunch outside when the weather allows us, or take a walk with kids. I know that sometimes they are so, jumping and running, just do something outside just to relax a little bit. Everyone will be relieved. I feel like this I could go on and talking about things that I do not practice, but these two at least I do. So that's why I mentioned those.
And I like the fact you said that the guilt never goes away. And I suppose it's just something that you learn to manage, and that it won't actually ever leave your working day. You're always trying to balance something, which I think a lot of our community are probably relieved to hear you say that. Ladies, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you one last question. What practical tips do you have for working parents who are striving for success while maintaining a balanced life? Do you have any tips or anything that you wish you could share that you wish somebody had told you before you became a working parent? Eve, should we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is that maybe that try not to feel guilty when asking for help. Like you need to realize that you just cannot do it all. If you have, and I understand some people don't have I have quite a strong support system in terms of grandparents, etc., and that can help out. But really using that, sometimes you don't want to ask, and it's just like they want to help. They're there, and they always want to help. But don't feel guilty about it. And I think it's that like. What we've been talking about is like, what are your non-negotiables, and setting some boundaries around those and really sticking to them, and being open and honest with people that is what your non-negotiables are, and this is how you work. And if it turns out that that's a role you're in or a situation you're in that's not going to work that way, then maybe it's not best for you. Because I think trying to struggle through potentially in a role and trying to do it all for a client whilst trying to maintain your home life, it's never going to work out well. You get yourself like that, you feel guilty, you become stressed. For me, you then, because I like to get to the gym or do a run, that totally alleviates my stress. That's the thing I need to do. And sometimes you feel guilty about doing it, but I know that the end result, I'm going to be much more productive, and I'm not going to be as narky with the kids, and I'm going to be I'm just going to be a lot better. And not feeling guilty about having to do that, and almost like setting that out at the start, like this is something I need to do. I'm not going to be sat here at my computer for 10 hours today, because I'm going to need to take a break, because I'm going to need to go and do XYZ, and I need to get to the gym or whatever it may be. But I think it's just a lot of being open and honest with it as well, and just there shouldn't be any shame in being I'm a working parent, and these are the things I need to do. I am absolutely committed to my job, and I absolutely want to be successful. It does not mean that I do not want to be successful just because I'm a parent, and the two should be allowed to go hand in hand. There shouldn't be there shouldn't be the fact that you can't progress and you can't get on in your career just because you have children.
I agree, and as you said, there should be no shame in it, which is absolutely true. I think just more people should know that, as you said, asking for help is fine. There's no shaming. There's no shaming being upfront. I have some needs, and a lot of people have those needs in the workplace. They shouldn't be unusual for people to ask. Irene, do you have any practical tips for working parents, or anything you wish somebody had told you?
I think what I said earlier, you just have to become extremely organized to kind of relieve the stress. I think is key. To have some sort of organization between you and your partner, just to keep things going. You can't leave things as last minute as you would before. So I think being organized really, really helps. I think also, like, when you come back, it's not easy. It's possible. So I think it's something that people shouldn't be afraid of. You can be nervous about it. There's no way about it. You get nervous, and I'm about to do this again, so I'm sure it'll be just as much of a challenge coming back. It's a challenge, and I think it's about like more about. I've noticed that where I found challenges, like people's mindsets. It's not that people don't want to help, or they're not nice, or they're not understanding. It's just the mindset that your life is now a little bit different, and the ways that you can help are different. And it's just about shifting that mindset so that how they can help you and looks a little bit different. And we just need to help with that mindset change, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It is a shift in mindset. You mentioned earlier that Capco has a great culture, and I think sometimes being in a culture where they have a great mindset and the employees have a great mindset and are just more mindful of their colleagues throughout their day is so important to be a part of. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier, if you're not part of a good culture, then a lot of really good talent just exits, and that is it. A lot of good companies lose out on good people because they're not flexible and they're not understanding. Lilian, yourself, any practical tips from you and anything you wish someone had told you?
Yeah, I'm echoing what Eve and Irene said. Don't be ashamed to ask for help, and be very organized because it requires a lot of organization to be a mom and a professional. But on top of it, I would say be present and productive. Meaning, if you are working, put your soul there and do your best during that time frame. When you are with your mom hat, be a mom, disconnect a little bit, be a mom, read, enjoy, dance with them, give the all the energy, whatever you are doing. That's the tip that I have.
Yeah, that's really good advice, being present for whatever it is that you're doing, whether that is at home or at work, and having to juggle each of them, just making sure that you're present for both. Ladies, we are already out of time. It's absolutely flown by, but thank you so much to Eve, Irene and Lilian for joining us today. Our community are going to absolutely love hearing all about your experiences of juggling a work-life balance. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for everybody listening, as always, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.